Dr. Alara Miles sat at her small, cluttered desk, staring at the blinking cursor on her computer screen. Outside her apartment window, the city hummed with life, cars honking, people rushing, neon lights flickering, but none of it seemed to matter to her. For years, she had poured her mind, her heart, and every bit of her energy into an invention that no one seemed to notice. A small AI program she had designed, capable of predicting technological breakthroughs, had been her passion and her obsession. Yet the world had turned its back on her work. Elara's life had become a quiet cycle of experiments, failures, and disappointment. Her colleagues at the university had once called her brilliant, but after a few missteps in grant proposals and public demonstrations, that praise had faded. Invitations to speak at conferences stopped coming. Emails from other scientists went unanswered. Even her friends drifted away, politely saying, "Maybe it's just not the right time for your ideas." It was in this quiet desperation that Alara had decided on a small, unusual act. A newspaper ad. Not a website, not a social media post, but a tiny classified in the local paper, which most people would ignore. She typed slowly, carefully choosing her words, seeking collaborator for experimental AI capable of predicting technological breakthroughs. Serious inquiries only. Contact E. Miles. She printed it out, cut it neatly, and dropped it into the mailbox at the corner of her apartment building. It felt almost absurd. How could such a tiny message, buried among ads for lost pets and garage sales, ever reach someone who cared? The next morning, Alara walked down to the corner shop to buy more supplies for her experiments. As she passed her mailbox, she noticed a small slip of paper tucked between the letters. Frowning, she picked it up. It was her ad. Someone had read it. She stared at it, heart fluttering with a mix of hope and fear. Across the street, a figure leaned on the railing of a second-story balcony. Cassian, her neighbor, an older man with graying hair and gentle eyes, had seen her drop the ad the day before. He had read it carefully, then whispered under his breath, "She never believed in you. But I always did." Cassian had lived in the building for over 30 years. A retired engineer, he had once worked on projects that pushed the limits of human ingenuity. Now, he spent his days tinkering in his small workshop, repairing old gadgets, and quietly observing the world. He had watched Alara for months, seen her struggles and quiet determination, and had grown to respect her more than she could ever imagine. When Alara returned to her apartment, she found Cassian waiting at her door, holding a small toolkit and a curious smile. "I read your ad," he said simply. "I thought, maybe you could use a second pair of eyes." Alara blinked, caught off guard. You want to help me?" she asked. Unsure if she was imagining it, Cassian nodded. "I've been around a long time. I know a thing or two about machines. And I've always believed in people who don't give up." Something inside Alara stirred. For so long, she had been alone in her work, doubting herself with every failure. Yet here was someone, a human who saw value in her, willing to join her despite the risk, despite the odds. They spent the afternoon unpacking her AI program, discussing its potential and limitations. Cassian asked questions that no one had asked in years, questions that forced Alara to see her work in a new light. He didn't just nod or offer empty praise. He challenged her, suggested alternatives, and sometimes pointed out flaws she hadn't noticed. And through it all, Alara felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in years: hope. By evening, the city lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the room filled with circuit boards, wires, and scattered notebooks. Alara leaned back in her chair, exhausted but exhilarated. She looked at Cassian, who was meticulously cleaning an old soldering iron, and felt a deep gratitude. "You know," she said softly, "I didn't think anyone would ever care about this work anymore." Cassian looked up and smiled. "I care. And that's enough to start." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Together, they fed data into the AI, ran simulations, and debated the best approaches. The AI could process information at incredible speed, analyzing trends in scientific research, patents, and new discoveries. but it had no understanding of the human side of innovation, the unpredictable leaps of imagination, the ethical decisions, the moral responsibility. That was where Ilara and Cassian shined. One evening, as the city's neon glow reflected off the apartment windows, the AI produced its first significant prediction: a potential breakthrough in renewable energy. Ilara stared at the screen, her heart pounding. This could change everything," she whispered. Cassian leaned over her shoulder. "It could. But remember, the AI shows possibilities. It doesn't solve the problems itself. We do." And in that moment, Ilara realized something profound. The AI was not a replacement for humans. It was a tool, a partner. And humans, through intuition, creativity, and empathy, were still the driving force behind progress. News of their small success didn't travel far. Not yet. Most people were still unaware. But the first sparks of recognition, even if small, began to glimmer. A researcher from a neighboring lab stopped by to ask questions. A local engineer offered advice. Even the newspaper editor called, curious about the ad that had appeared on page 7. Ilara felt a cautious optimism she hadn't allowed herself in years. For so long, she had been invisible, her work dismissed as irrelevant. But now, with Cassian's quiet support and the AI's analytical power, she could finally imagine a future where her ideas mattered. Late one night, after everyone else had gone, Ilara and Cassian sat on the small balcony outside her apartment. The city stretched out before them, a sea of lights and possibilities. Cassian held a cup of tea, while Ilara traced patterns in the condensation on her glass. "You know," Ilara said, "I placed that ad almost as a joke. I didn't expect anyone to respond." Cassian chuckled softly. "Sometimes, the smallest actions create the biggest changes. A word, a note, an ad. It can be enough to start something new." Ilara nodded, feeling the weight of his words. The city seemed alive with potential, every street and alley brimming with unseen stories and untapped brilliance. And for the first time in a long while, she felt she was part of that story. Over the next few weeks, their collaboration deepened. Cassian introduced her to old friends in the engineering community. People who had once dismissed her work but now listened with genuine interest. The AI began producing more refined predictions, and together, Ilara and Cassian worked on turning those predictions into practical experiments. And always, in the back of her mind, was that whispered affirmation from her neighbor: "She never believed in you. But I always did." It was a reminder of what mattered most. Not fame, not recognition, but faith. Faith in the work, and faith in the human spirit that could make even the smallest idea grow into something extraordinary. As part 1 closes, the stage is set. Ilara, the overlooked genius, has found a partner in Cassian. The AI offers possibilities, but human insight, courage, and belief are the true engines of innovation. The story of hope, ingenuity, and human resilience has only just begun. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Ilara's apartment, casting warm streaks across the cluttered desks and scattered notebooks. The hum of the city below was already rising, cars moving in precise streams, people hurrying to offices and schools, but inside the apartment, another kind of energy was building. Ilara and Cassian had been working together for just a few weeks, but the results were already different. The AI, which Ilara affectionately called Athena, had started producing predictions that were more focused, more detailed. Yet something was missing. The machine could crunch endless numbers, analyze trends, and find correlations invisible to humans, but it could not understand the subtleties of morality, creativity, or intuition. Cassian noticed it first. One morning, as they reviewed Athena's newest set of predictions, he frowned. "Look at this," he said, pointing at the screen. "The AI suggests a solution for energy storage. Technically, it's brilliant, but it would require rare materials that could take decades to mine and could harm local communities. We can't implement it like this." Ilara leaned over, eyes narrowing. "You're right. Athena didn't account for the human cost. It sees efficiency, but it doesn't see ethics. Cassian nodded. Exactly. That's where we come in. Machines are powerful, but humans know right from wrong. Humans anticipate consequences that no AI can fully calculate. And assented. For hours, they discussed alternatives. Alara sketched diagrams, while Cassian made calculations by hand, combining their perspectives with Athena's data. Slowly, a solution emerged. A renewable energy system that relied on widely available materials, worked efficiently, and had minimal environmental impact. It wasn't as fast or as flashy as Athena's first suggestion, but it was realistic, ethical, and implementable. Alara felt a rush of excitement. We did it, she whispered. Athena gives us possibilities. And we give it direction. Cassian smiled. And that's why humans will always matter. Machines are tools, but humans are the heart and mind behind them. Word of their collaboration began to spread quietly through the scientific community. A young engineer from a nearby lab visited. Curious about the experiments, Alara and Cassian welcomed him, showing how Athena worked and explaining the human decisions behind every choice. The engineer was amazed. I've never seen an AI used like this, he said. Usually, people let machines decide everything. But you use it as a partner, Alara shrugged. It's the only way it makes sense. A machine can predict, but it cannot dream. It cannot weigh the unseen consequences or imagine solutions outside the box. Cassian added, we complement it. And together, we can accomplish more than either could alone. Their small victories fueled them. Each day brought new challenges. Data that didn't make sense, simulations that failed, and minor setbacks that tested their patience. But every failure was a lesson. Alara and Cassian began to see a pattern. Athena excelled at logic and computation, while humans excelled at judgment, intuition, and creativity. Alone, each was limited. Together, they were unstoppable. One afternoon, as the sky darkened with storm clouds, Alara leaned back in her chair, rubbing her tired eyes. Do you ever wonder if anyone will notice our work outside this building? She asked. Cassian looked out the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. Maybe not yet, but it doesn't matter. Right now, we're learning, building, creating. Recognition is temporary. Progress is permanent. Alara smiled, feeling the truth in his words. She remembered the whispered encouragement from the day of the newspaper ad. She never believed in you. But I always did. Cassian's faith was not about recognition. It was about seeing potential and nurturing it. That was a human strength no AI could replicate. As the storm raged outside, Athena alerted them to a new set of predictions. An innovative design for solar panels that could increase energy output by 20%. The numbers were promising. But the design required a delicate balance of materials and angles that no algorithm alone could optimize. Alara studied the diagrams. Athena has given us the framework, she said. But the final design, that's ours. They spent the evening adjusting angles, recalculating ratios, and testing materials in small prototypes. Cassian's hands, steady and practiced, guided delicate soldering and assembly, while Alara fine-tuned sensors and circuits. By midnight, a miniature solar panel stood on the desk, humming with quiet energy. It works, Alara whispered, barely able to contain her excitement. And it's safe, efficient, and scalable. Cassian nodded. This is what I've been waiting for. People will see it one day. But even if they don't, we know what humans can do. That knowledge, that's ours to keep and grow. The next morning, a letter arrived. It was from a small renewable energy conference, inviting Alara to present her work. She hesitated, unsure if she wanted to step back into a world that had ignored her for so long. Cassian noticed her hesitation. You've earned this, he said gently. Not for them, but for yourself. To show that human ingenuity, your ingenuity, can make a real difference. Ilara nodded slowly. Perhaps it was time. She had spent years in isolation, doubting her own potential. But with Cassian's guidance and Athena's analytical power, she had proven to herself that humans still had something unique to offer. The conference was small, but impactful. Ilara presented the solar panel design, explaining both Athena's calculations and the human reasoning behind every decision. The audience listened intently, asking questions that tested her understanding. She answered confidently, showing how humans could amplify technology through creativity, ethics, and intuition. One scientist, a prominent researcher in energy systems, leaned forward and said, "This is remarkable. You've taken AI predictions and made them practical. And more importantly, you've done it responsibly. Humans often overlook the consequences of their inventions, but you haven't." Ilara felt a warmth in her chest. For the first time in years, her work was seen, not as eccentric or misguided, but as meaningful and valuable. Cassian, standing quietly at the back of the room, gave her a small nod. His expression was calm, but his eyes shone with pride. Once again, Ilara remembered his whispered words from the ad. "She never believed in you, but I always did." And now, she believed in herself. Returning home, Ilara and Cassian reviewed Athena's data and began planning the next steps. There were more experiments to run, more designs to test, and countless problems to solve. The world was full of challenges, but also possibilities, and they knew that as long as humans guided technology with thought, ethics, and creativity, no obstacle was insurmountable. Over the next few weeks, they faced several small crises. A miscalculation in a prototype, a software glitch in Athena, and supply shortages for their materials. Each problem tested their patience and their skills. Yet, in every case, human insight prevailed. Cassian's experience and Ilara's intuition solved problems that Athena alone could not. They realized more clearly than ever that the future of technology depended not on AI alone, but on humans working with it, guiding it, improving it. Late one night, after a particularly long day, they sat on the balcony, looking out over the city. The streets glimmered with lights, reflecting off the wet asphalt. People hurried home, unaware of the small revolution happening in a quiet apartment above them. Ilara sighed, leaning back in her chair. "Do you ever think we're too small to matter?" Cassian shook his head. "No. Every small action has a ripple. Every idea has the potential to change the world. And the best part? We're not doing this alone. Humans everywhere are thinking, creating, building. That's how progress happens." Ilara smiled. "You really do believe in people." Cassian shrugged. "I believe in humans. They're capable of amazing things when they work together and trust each other." And in that quiet, rainy night, Ilara realized something essential. Athena could predict possibilities, but humans could turn them into reality. Machines could calculate outcomes, but humans could choose paths guided by ethics, creativity, and courage. And together, humans and machines, guided by hope, they could achieve far more than either could alone. Part 2 ended with a promise. The AI offered knowledge, humans offered wisdom, and the future, uncertain and vast, awaited their collaboration. Ilara's journey was no longer solitary. She had a partner in Cassian, a tool in Athena, and most importantly, a belief in the power of human ingenuity. The story of hope, resilience, and human advantage was only growing stronger. The weeks following the small energy conference brought both excitement and unease to Ilara's life. For the first time, she had recognition, but it was fragile, as though it could vanish with a single misstep. The quiet satisfaction she had felt while working with Cassian and Athena now mingled with anxiety. Her inbox was fuller than ever. Emails from scientists, engineers, and curious students, but also from people who wanted something more. Control, influence, and credit. Elara sat at her desk, staring at one particular email that made her chest tighten. The sender claimed to represent a major technology company and asked for a private demonstration of her renewable energy design. They wanted to discuss funding, patents, and potentially ownership. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure whether to reply. Cassian, who had been quietly soldering a small component, glanced up. "It's tempting," he said. "But remember, not everyone who notices brilliance wants to help. Some just want to take it." Elara nodded slowly. "I know. But if we refuse, we might never get the resources to expand our work." Cassian placed the soldering iron down and walked over. "Then we control the terms. We let them see the progress, but we never give away our judgment. Athena can predict trends, but humans control the ethics and the choices. That's our advantage." Elara exhaled. "You're right. Humans first. Always." The next day, she agreed to meet representatives from the company at her apartment. Cassian accompanied her, calm and confident. The visitors were polite, curious, and seemingly impressed by Athena and the prototypes. But as the demonstration progressed, Elara noticed something subtle: questions that tried to steer her toward shortcuts, hints of a desire to exploit the technology without considering consequences. After the meeting, the visitors left with smiles and polite assurances. Elara felt a pit in her stomach. "They want the results, not the responsibility," she said quietly. Cassian nodded. "Exactly. And that's why human guidance matters. Machines can predict the future, but humans decide how to use it. That choice is what separates integrity from greed." Later that week, another challenge appeared, this time from the media. A local tech magazine published an article about her work, highlighting Athena and the renewable energy breakthrough. While most of the coverage was positive, a few lines questioned her credibility, suggesting that her earlier failures indicated she might not be capable of leading a large-scale project. Elara read the article and felt a familiar pang of doubt. Had she really changed? Was she capable of achieving something meaningful? Or was this recognition just temporary? She stared at Athena's latest predictions and Cassian's calm demeanor, and realized the answer lay not in public opinion but in her own actions. Cassian noticed her worry and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Do you remember the ad? She never believed in you, but I always did. Some people may doubt, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that we believe in what we're building and in each other." His words struck a chord. She realized that the people who doubted her were irrelevant to the work itself. The important thing was to continue, to refine the designs, and to use Athena as a tool, not a crutch. The days that followed were filled with intense work. Athena generated new predictions for energy efficiency improvements, which required not just technical skill but careful human oversight. Each prototype presented a new problem: materials that reacted unpredictably, measurements that needed adjustment, and calculations that demanded intuition. Alone, Athena could have run simulations endlessly, but the subtle human insight from Elara and Cassian was irreplaceable. One evening, a curious visitor arrived unannounced. It was a young researcher from the city university, someone who had previously dismissed Elara's work but now appeared genuinely interested. She had questions, thoughtful and challenging, and Elara realized that exposure to public scrutiny was forcing her to communicate more clearly, to defend her decisions, and to think even more creatively. "You've improved a lot," the visitor said, examining a prototype. "But how do you know these designs will hold up in the real world? Machines can simulate possibilities, but they can't guarantee outcomes." Elara smiled, sensing the teaching moment. "Exactly. That's why humans matter. Athena shows possibilities, but humans choose which path to follow. We test, adapt, and apply judgment. That's the edge we have." Cassian nodded in agreement. "Machines are fast, but humans are flexible. We can respond to uncertainty in ways no AI can predict." Their work continued with few interruptions, but the shadow of doubt lingered. Rival scientists began sending inquiries, some polite, some probing for weaknesses. While most competitors respected Athena's potential, a few attempted to undermine Elara, suggesting that her reliance on an AI program was a crutch rather than a tool. Instead of discouraging her, these challenges became fuel. Elara realized that opposition was inevitable when humans created something innovative. Athena could calculate risks, but it was humans who had to make bold, morally guided decisions. Each small victory, whether refining a prototype, solving a difficult calculation, or simply explaining the ethical choices behind a design, reinforced her confidence. One night, while reviewing data with Cassian, the AI produced a prediction unlike any before. It suggested a way to drastically reduce energy loss in solar panels by using a new material that was extremely rare and difficult to work with. Athena's analysis was flawless, but the implementation would be nearly impossible and potentially expensive. Elara frowned. Technically, it's brilliant. But practically, it might fail. Or worse, it might create new problems we can't foresee. Cassian studied the data carefully. It's a perfect example of human advantage. Athena shows the solution, but humans judge whether it's worth pursuing. We decide the path, and that choice makes all the difference. After several days of debate and testing, they modified Athena's prediction, finding a compromise that used accessible materials while still improving efficiency. The panel prototype worked beautifully, a testament to the synergy between machine intelligence and human judgment. Their success, however, did not go unnoticed. Word reached larger corporations and news outlets, some of whom tried to claim credit or pressure Elara for control. She received another invitation to present at a larger conference, this time with strict rules about sharing intellectual property. It was tempting the chance to reach a wider audience, but Cassian reminded her of what was truly important: maintaining human oversight and ethical responsibility. "Remember why we started," he said. "We are not just showing what Athena can do. We are showing what humans can do. How our judgment, creativity, and courage shape the future. Never compromise that." Elara nodded. The pressure of public attention was strong, but her determination was stronger. She spent the next days preparing her presentation, emphasizing the collaboration between Athena's predictions and human decision-making. She made clear that technology alone could not solve problems without ethical guidance, moral responsibility, and creative thinking. Finally, the day of the conference arrived. Elara stepped onto the stage with Cassian beside her. Athena's projections lit the screen behind them, showing predictions for energy solutions and efficiency improvements. Elara spoke with clarity, confidence, and passion, explaining not just the science, but the human decisions behind every prototype and every calculation. The audience was captivated. Questions poured in, challenging assumptions, probing for weaknesses, and testing the limits of the design. Elara answered each with poise, demonstrating both technical knowledge and human insight. Cassian added context when necessary, showing that collaboration amplified their understanding and output. By the end of the presentation, the crowd erupted in applause. For the first time, Elara felt not just recognition, but validation. Humans could still make a difference in a world filled with machines. Their creativity, judgment, and moral compass were invaluable. As they returned to their apartment that evening, Cassian poured 2 cups of tea, and they sat in comfortable silence. The city lights reflected on the wet streets below, a reminder of the vast, unpredictable world outside. "You handled that beautifully," Cassian said softly. "They doubted you, but you proved them wrong, not just with Athena, but with your own judgment. That's what matters." Elara smiled, feeling a sense of quiet triumph. "It's still hard to believe sometimes, after all these years, to finally see humans recognized for what we can do." Cassian nodded. "It's not just recognition, it's understanding. And once people understand, the possibilities are endless. We've only just begun." Elara looked out at the city, a spark of hope lighting her eyes. Shadows of doubt had been present, but they were fading. The future was uncertain, yes, but it was also full of potential. Athena could predict paths, but humans could choose wisely, act boldly, and shape the world with conscience and creativity. As Part 3 closes, the story stands at a turning point. Elara and Cassian have faced doubt, scrutiny, and rival challenges, but they have proven that human insight, judgment, and moral responsibility are irreplaceable. The AI is powerful, but humans remain the heart of progress, and the next phase of their journey promises even greater challenges and even greater triumphs. The days after the conference were filled with both excitement and tension. News of Elara and Cassian's solar panel innovation had spread beyond the city, reaching scientists, engineers, and even government agencies. Invitations to collaborate poured in, but one message caught Elara's attention. A global energy council requested an urgent demonstration. Their data predicted that in the next month, several regions would face critical energy shortages. They wanted Elara and Cassian's technology deployed immediately. Elara stared at the request, her mind racing. Athena had already predicted the solution. But real-world implementation was another challenge entirely. The scale, the logistics, and the urgency made it a daunting task. Cassian placed a hand on her shoulder. "This is it," he said. "The moment where humans show what we can do. Athena gives us the calculations, but we make the choices." Elara nodded, determination settling in. They began planning immediately. Athena analyzed energy consumption patterns, regional climates, and material availability. It produced several models, each suggesting slightly different approaches. One model required rare metals, another depended on precise timing and coordination across continents. Athena could calculate the efficiency, but not the unpredictability of human logistics or environmental surprises. Elara realized that only human judgment could finalize the plan. She and Cassian spent hours debating options, considering factors the AI could not fully account for. Local infrastructure, workforce skills, weather conditions, and even cultural attitudes toward technology. After long discussions, they settled on a practical, flexible solution. A combination of modular solar panels, locally sourced materials, and community-driven installation teams. It was not the most efficient design Athena had predicted, but it was reliable, scalable, and achievable in the given time frame. Once the plan was ready, they traveled to the first region under threat, a coastal city whose power grids were on the verge of collapse. Elara and Cassian arrived to find anxious officials and engineers, many of whom had never worked with advanced AI systems before. Cassian smiled reassuringly at Elara. "Remember, humans first. They may not trust Athena yet, but they will trust us if we show confidence and clarity." The installation began. Elara supervised sensor alignment, while Cassian coordinated the assembly of the modular panels. Teams of local engineers followed instructions, learning quickly from their guidance. Athena calculated optimal panel angles and energy distribution, while Elara and Cassian made real-time adjustments when unforeseen issues arose. A damaged roof beam, a sudden downpour, a shortage of connectors. Each problem required quick thinking, improvisation, and calm leadership. By nightfall, the first wave of solar panels was operational. The city lights, previously dim and unreliable, flickered steadily. Officials cheered, but Elara remained focused. Athena predicted that energy shortages would persist until the full system was deployed, so they worked through the night, coordinating teams and monitoring performance. The next day brought new challenges. In another city, unexpected weather conditions, high winds, and heavy rain threatened to disrupt installation. Athena provided simulations, but none could fully account for the unpredictability of the storm. Elara gathered the local team and adjusted the plan, reinforcing panel mounts and rearranging placement to reduce risk. Cassian observed quietly. "This is exactly what I meant," he said. "Athena predicts possibilities, but humans respond to reality. That's our strength." Days turned into weeks. Elara and Cassian traveled from region to region, solving problems Athena could not anticipate. Supply delays, miscommunications, and natural obstacles tested their patience and skill. Each time, Human ingenuity prevailed. They adapted, improvised, and made ethical decisions to ensure the technology benefited communities rather than exploiting them. Despite the stress, Ilara felt a growing sense of fulfillment. This was the first time her work directly improved lives on a global scale. She realized that technology alone could never have succeeded. It required human oversight, judgment, and creativity. Athena provided the possibilities, but humans determined which paths were safe, ethical, and practical. One evening, in a quiet moment on the balcony of a temporary apartment in the coastal city, Ilara reflected on how far they had come. Cassian joined her, sipping tea. The city below shimmered with newly powered lights. "Do you ever feel overwhelmed?" Ilara asked softly. Cassian chuckled. "All the time. But it's in those moments that humans shine brightest. Machines give data, but humans give direction, purpose, and heart." Ilara nodded, thinking of the whisper from the newspaper ad. "She never believed in you. But I always did." Cassian's faith had guided her through doubt, failure, and now global responsibility. Their work was noticed by international media. News outlets highlighted the AI's predictive power, but more importantly, the human ingenuity behind it. Scientists praised their ethical approach, governments applauded their practical solutions, and communities celebrated the restored energy systems. However, with recognition came scrutiny. Some critics argued that humans should not rely on AI at all, fearing overdependence on technology. Others claimed that Athena was too powerful to be controlled by a small team. Ilara felt the tension but remembered Cassian's words. Humans choose the path, and they must choose wisely. The most challenging moment arrived when Athena predicted a potential failure in a major city's grid, a risk that could leave millions without power if not addressed. The AI suggested a technically perfect solution using exotic materials, but local availability was impossible within the given time frame. Ilara studied the data and took a deep breath. "We'll need a human solution," she said. "Something practical, flexible, and fast. Athena can guide us. But we decide what to implement." Cassian nodded. "Exactly. Humans first, always." Working with local engineers, they devised an alternative, a combination of backup generators, temporary solar arrays, and energy rationing strategies. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. When the crisis passed, the city's energy grid stabilized, and the population avoided major disruption. Ilara realized the truth of the moment. Athena could calculate probabilities and efficiencies, but humans determined what was real, achievable, and ethical. Machines could predict, but only humans could act responsibly under uncertainty. Weeks later, after completing deployments across multiple regions, Ilara and Cassian returned home. Exhausted, but triumphant, they reflected on the journey. Communities had new energy systems, lives had been improved, and human ingenuity had proven irreplaceable. Ilara looked at Athena's screen, which displayed predictions for future innovations. "The possibilities are endless," she said quietly. Cassian smiled. "Yes, but remember, possibilities are nothing without humans to act, to decide, to guide them. That's what makes the future bright." In the following days, Ilara began documenting their work, not just the technical data, but the human decisions behind every choice, the ethical considerations, and the moments when intuition and creativity made all the difference. She realized that the greatest lesson of their journey was not about AI or technology alone, but about the irreplaceable value of human judgment and collaboration. Late at night, while reviewing plans for future projects, Ilara felt a sense of peace. Athena's calculations were precise, but she knew the true strength lay in humans. Guiding technology responsibly, Cassian, watching from the corner of the room, nodded in quiet approval. Together, they had faced impossible odds, unpredictable challenges, and global crises. They had used Athena to explore possibilities, but they had used their humanity to make those possibilities real. They had proven that in a world dominated by machines, humans were still the ultimate innovators, problem solvers, and ethical decision-makers. As Part 4 closes, the story reaches a peak of HFY inspiration. Alara and Cassian have saved communities, proven the value of human oversight, and shown that while machines calculate possibilities, humans shape reality. The world is now aware of their work, and the next step promises not only recognition, but legacy, the lasting proof that human creativity, courage, and moral guidance can change the world. The weeks following the global energy deployment were unlike anything Alara had ever experienced. Invitations to speak, collaborate, and advise poured in from around the world. Her work with Athena had not only stabilized energy grids in multiple regions, but it had also demonstrated a truth that Alara had long believed. Human creativity, judgment, and ethical guidance were essential in shaping technology. Yet, despite the acclaim, she remained grounded. Cassian often reminded her that recognition was temporary, but progress was enduring. Together, they returned to their small apartment, the familiar clutter of notebooks, wires, and prototype devices greeting them like old friends. Athena hummed quietly in the corner, running simulations for future projects. One morning, a letter arrived from the Global Scientific Council. They requested that Alara present a keynote at their annual conference. This time, the audience would include world leaders, top scientists, and innovators from every continent. The pressure was immense, but Alara felt ready. Not because she was confident in the spotlight, but because she knew the message she wanted to share. Humans matter. Cassian stood beside her as they prepared. Remember, he said, it's not just about the technology. It's about showing what humans can do when they think, create, and act responsibly. That's your message. Alara nodded. Athena predicts possibilities. Humans make reality. The day of the conference arrived. A massive auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Scientists whispered to one another. Government officials exchanged notes, and media representatives set up cameras. Alara stepped onto the stage with Cassian, her hands steady despite the enormity of the moment. Athena's projections lit the screen behind them, showing data from the energy deployments, simulations for future renewable systems, and predictions for technological innovations. Alara began to speak. This work is not about AI replacing humans, she said clearly. Athena shows possibilities, trends, and potential solutions. But possibilities alone are not enough. Humans guide, choose, and act. Humans consider ethics, creativity, and consequences, and that is why we are essential. The audience listened intently. Questions came quickly, testing both her knowledge and her ethical reasoning. One leader asked, "How do you ensure that your technology is used responsibly worldwide?" Alara smiled. Responsibility does not come from technology alone. It comes from people. We can create systems, but humans must guide them. Humans decide what is right. And that is why collaboration, education, and transparency are vital. Cassian added, Athena can predict outcomes, but humans must adapt to reality. That combination is what makes progress not only possible, but sustainable. The applause that followed was overwhelming. But more importantly than the recognition, Alara felt a deep satisfaction. She had finally shared her vision. Humans and machines working together, each complementing the other. Guided by ethics, creativity, and insight. After the keynote, several young scientists approached her, eager to learn, collaborate, and join the effort. Alara recognized something familiar in their eyes, the same spark of hope and belief she had once struggled to nurture in herself. She smiled, realizing that mentorship, like collaboration, was a human strength that no AI could replace. "Would you consider letting me work with you?" one student asked. "I want to help apply these solutions to other regions and continue improving them." Alara nodded, inspired by the enthusiasm. "Yes. Together, we can explore possibilities and turn them into reality. But remember, Athena predicts, humans decide. That is our advantage. Cassian watched quietly, proud of how far they had come. He remembered the small newspaper ad, the whispered words that had started this journey. She never believed in you, but I always did. That belief had been the catalyst, and now, a new generation of human innovators was ready to continue the work. In the days that followed, Elara and Cassian focused on building a network of collaborators around the globe. They created small hubs where students, engineers, and researchers could experiment, guided by Athena's predictions but grounded in human decision-making. The hubs quickly became centers of innovation, spreading knowledge, ethical guidance, and practical solutions worldwide. One evening, after a long day of meetings and planning, Elara and Cassian returned to their apartment. The city outside shimmered with lights powered by systems they had helped deploy. Elara sat by the window, looking down at the streets below, and felt a profound sense of fulfillment. "We've done more than create energy systems," she said softly. "We've shown that humans are still the driving force behind progress. Athena can help, but we decide what matters, what is ethical, and what is possible." Cassian smiled. "Exactly. And you've inspired countless others to do the same. That is the true legacy." Elara thought about the path that had led her here, the years of isolation, doubt, and failed experiments. She remembered the whispered encouragement from her neighbor, the quiet faith that had never wavered. It had carried her through doubt, given her courage, and reminded her that human belief and support could transform possibilities into reality. Later, she drafted a small newspaper ad, reminiscent of the first one that had started it all, seeking collaborators to explore new possibilities in science and technology. Humans guide, machines calculate. Serious inquiries only. Contact E. Miles. This time, however, the ad was different. It was not a desperate call for attention. It was an invitation to be part of something larger than any one person, a movement that combined human judgment with machine intelligence to solve real-world problems. Cassian looked at her, smiling. "It's amazing how far a small act of faith can go." Elara nodded. "It started with belief. Yours. And now it spreads to others. Humans have always been capable of remarkable things when we trust each other, act responsibly, and apply our creativity." Over the following months, their work continued, expanding to new regions and new challenges. Renewable energy systems, efficient transportation models, and AI-assisted planning were deployed in communities around the globe. Every project emphasized human decision-making, ethical responsibility, and creative problem-solving. Athena's predictions became more sophisticated, but humans remained at the helm, guiding technology to practical and meaningful solutions. One evening, as Elara and Cassian walked through a neighborhood now powered by their systems, children played beneath streetlights that never flickered, and families moved about with confidence. People greeted them warmly, some recognizing the work that had brought energy and stability to their lives. Elara felt a deep sense of purpose. "We've done more than we imagined," she said softly. Cassian chuckled. "And yet, it's only the beginning. Humans will continue to innovate, to guide, and to shape the world. Athena will continue to calculate, but humans will continue to decide. That's the true power of our kind." Elara smiled, thinking of the journey from a small newspaper ad to a global impact. Every step had been guided by human insight, courage, and collaboration. Technology could predict, accelerate, and assist, but humans remained the heart, the mind, and the conscience of progress. That night, as they sat on their balcony watching the city lights shimmer like stars, Elara reflected on the path ahead. There would always be challenges, doubts, and unforeseen obstacles, but she knew that as long as humans applied wisdom, creativity, and ethical guidance, there was no problem too great to solve. Cassian poured tea into 2 cups and handed one to Elara. "To humans," he said quietly. Elara lifted her cup, smiling. "To humans, and to the possibilities we can turn into reality." In that quiet moment, the story came full circle. From a small act of faith, a neighbor's whispered words, to a global legacy of human ingenuity, Ilara realized the enduring truth. Machines can predict, simulate, and calculate. But humans, with our creativity, judgment, and moral compass, shape the world. We are the architects of progress, the stewards of innovation, and the heartbeat of possibility. And as the city hummed beneath them, powered by the collaboration of humans and machines, Ilara and Cassian knew one thing with certainty. The future was bright, because humans believed and acted. The journey of doubt, discovery, and triumph had reached its peak, leaving behind a lasting legacy of hope, ingenuity, and the irreplaceable power of the human spirit.